Luis Franco. I'm a tenure track investigator at the National Institutes of Health. And the first time I heard about COVID, I was actually at work, and I read online that there was this virus in China. And at the time, it seemed interesting, and I discussed it with my wife that evening, but within days we were in lockdown. My research was certainly affected by the pandemic. I think everyone's research was. At first, it was mostly a matter of just access to the work that we do, right? It was a matter of not being able to go to the lab, not being able to do the research that we do, have the students at the lab. So certainly, the research was affected by COVID. I think living through the pandemic has, I think it has led to two things in my head in terms of how I perceive immunology. One, which is the most obvious, is that this has highlighted the importance of understanding the immune system, understanding immune responses, understanding how pathogens like viruses spread in a population, and how our immune system responds to that, both in terms of eliminating the virus, but also in terms of causing disease, causing illness. The second one, I think, is not specific to immunology, but for sort of science as a whole. I think the experience of living through this particular pandemic has made me question the way in which we as scientists have been able to communicate with the public about what we do, about the nature of science, about the importance of science. I think there's been a lot of really drastic polarization where many scientists feel like we're being misunderstood, and like there's a lot of public opinion against science. And I think that's probably true, but that is not just the fault of other people. I think we as scientists have failed to sort of engage in more meaningful conversations with the general public about the nature of what we do, how what we do is imperfect, but it's one approach to solving problems, one way of understanding nature, understanding the world, and that we don't always have the answers, but we can make a really honest effort to find them and to communicate them. So, and I think in immunology in particular, because this was a viral disease that was wreaking havoc around the world, in part because of immune responses, I feel like we need to do a lot to understand how to best communicate science to the public, how to engage in sort of humble but meaningful conversations with the general public about what we do, and how to engage people in, say, the social sciences in terms of understanding how information spreads, how misinformation spreads, and what we can do as scientists to do a better job at communicating what we do. I think the pandemic had a profound effect on trainees. I think the for both at NIH we have a lot of post-baccalaureate trainees, people who are out of college and they're transitioning to graduate school or medical school. And so that's a relatively short research experience. It's 2 years typically, 1 to 2 years. And so for many people, their whole first exposure to, meaningful exposure to research was one that is very different from what normally happens in a lab. And for people who are in longer term positions, like postdoctoral fellows who are typically there for 3 to 5 years, again, it was a huge disruption of the type of work that they were able to do, the speed at which they were able to do things, the ability to sometimes get reagents for things or move projects forward. In many labs, it switched the emphasis of the work quite dramatically, and so I think it had a profound effect on trainees.